Well, we were going to wait for about 4 more members, but the chairman counts as 4. So we're starting. Thank you, each of you, for coming here. The Committee on the Judiciary Subcommittee of the Constitution, Civil Rights, and Civil Liberties will come to order. Without objection, the chair is authorized to declare recesses of the subcommittee at any time. I welcome everyone to today's hearing on examining the constitutional role of the pardon power, especially the young students from collegiate school. I will now recognize myself for an opening statement. The fundamental purpose of the pardon power is to ensure fairness and proportionality in our criminal justice system and to provide a check against miscarriages of justice. In essence, mercy and justice. In light of this purpose, we examine today questions about the potential constitutional limits of that power, particularly given how President Donald Trump has used or has implicitly suggested that he may use this power. Article 2, Section 2 of the Constitution outlines the powers and responsibilities of the executive branch and provides, among other things, that the President, quote, shall have the power to grant reprieves and pardons for offenses against the United States except in cases of impeachment, unquote. The Constitution only places 2 textual constraints on the pardon power, limiting its reach to federal offenses only and barring its use in the case of impeachment. Nonetheless, the exercise of the pardon power under certain circumstances raises a number of unanswered constitutional and legal questions. Ergo, this hearing. Chief among these questions are: 1, whether the President may pardon him or herself; 2, whether other provisions of the Constitution, while not an explicit restraint of the pardon power, nonetheless place boundaries on its exercise; and 3, whether issuing a pardon or offering to issue a pardon can implicate criminal statutes prohibiting obstruction of justice or bribery. The discussion of these questions, which during normal times may have been mostly on an only academic level, has taken on greater importance during this Trump presidency. For example, President Trump, in the midst of the now concluded special counsel investigation, boldly asserted in a tweet, "I have the absolute right to," capitalize, "pardon myself," unquote. I would note that today's hearing was scheduled before Attorney General William Barr transmitted his letter characterizing the principal findings of Special Counsel Robert Mueller and his interpretations thereof. The constitutional and legal issues that this hearing will explore, however, may be profoundly relevant to evaluating one of the counsel's questions of special counsel's, one of his investigations. Did President Trump abuse the powers of his office, including the pardon power, to obstruct this and related investigations into his conduct and the conduct of his associates, and might he do so in similar circumstances in the future? I am sure my friends on the other side will argue that Attorney General Barr's recent letter, well, I'm not sure they will. Some of them will say it totally exonerated President Trump. Some of them will realize that it didn't say that. They will say there was no collusion, and there apparently was concurrence with Mr. Mueller. There was no collusion. But I would caution my colleagues against relying solely on Mr. Barr's summary and to avoid making such a sweeping pronouncement before seeing the actual report written by Special Counsel Mueller. Mr. Barr only had a few hours to look at the report. Mr. Mueller had 22 months to prepare it and study it, and it was part of his work, and he said that it did not exonerate the president. The truth is that Mr. Barr's letter raised more questions than it answered. Mr. Barr's letter revealed Special Counsel Mueller pointedly noted that it did not exonerate the president for obstruction of justice. In fact, according to Mr. Barr, the Special Counsel's report set out, quote, evidence on both sides of the question, unquote, which would include evidence that supports the conclusion that the president obstructed justice. This is why it's imperative that Mr. Barr provide the Special Counsel's report in its entirety to Congress, along with any underlying evidence. That's pretty much what's happened in other reports of counsels. They have not drawn conclusions. They've left it to the Congress to do that. Only in this case was there a defensive back on the field who jumped in and intercepted the ball before it was passed to Congress. Frankly, whether or not President Trump colluded with the Russian government is irrelevant to the question of whether he abused the powers of his office to obstruct the Special Counsel's investigation. Special Counsel Mueller had a duty to provide the full picture of Russian interference in the 2016 presidential election. President Trump cannot abuse the powers of his office to obstruct a law enforcement investigation. Yet President Trump's use of the pardon power over the last 2 years raises concerns the president may have been willing to do just that to protect himself and his political allies. Since taking office, President Trump has issued pardons to former Maricopa County Sheriff Joe Arpaio, former Chief of Staff of Vice President Cheney, Mr. Scooter Libby, and conservative author Dinesh D'Souza, as well as Jack Johnson and celebrity? Somebody that knew a celebrity. She was from my district, in fact. President Trump's pardoning of these individuals, whose circumstances and convictions closely track with those of his former associates, including Michael Cohen, Paul Manafort, and Michael Flynn, raised the possibility the president was signaling his willingness to issue pardons to discourage cooperation with the special counsel investigation or the ongoing investigations in the Southern District of New York. In fact, this past Monday, a lawyer for former Trump campaign foreign policy advisor George Papadopoulos, who pled guilty to lying to the FBI about facts material to the special counsel's investigation, revealed that she had petitioned the White House for a pardon on behalf of her client before special counsel Mueller announced the end of his investigation. Pardoning Mr. Papadopoulos would not be an act of mercy, or the pardoning of Mr. Flynn necessarily, or Mr. Manafort, or Mr. Gates, or the rest. Instead, it would only send the message the President of the United States believes it is acceptable to lie to the federal law enforcement officials. While I have concerns about many of the ways President Trump has used the pardon power, his exercise of the power has been commendable in some instances. Yes, that goes back to the celebrity's friend and my constituent, Alice Marie Johnson. Decades of the failed war on drugs, and thousands of federal prisoners like her whose clemency petitions merit the president's attention as well. It's my hope that going forward, President Trump will use this power to grant more meritorious clemency petitions. The sad thing is he's really only issued 2 that were meritorious, except for Jack Johnson, which was deceased. So that was done not to relieve somebody of a sentence, but really for President Trump's sense of justice from 80 years ago or 70 years ago. It was done posthumously. But Miss Alice Marie Johnson and a gentleman from Nashville were given pardons, and they deserved them, I think. But there are thousands and thousands of other people who deserve them too, and they haven't gotten them. And from what I understand, the president has asked for a list of celebrities who should be pardoned. Not a list of poor African Americans who've been the subject of an unfair and unduly oppressive on minorities drug war, like Ms. Johnson, who came to the attention of Ms. Kardashian. Yes, a name I can't remember, Kardashian. But celebrity connections. Anyway, I thank the witnesses for agreeing to appear today, and I look forward to their testimony. And I now recognize the ranking member of the subcommittee, the gentleman from Shreveport, Louisiana,